the cloud sometimes, like it'll only, you don't have anything else on the cloud, do you?
No.
Okay,
No.
sweet. All right. Now that we have that little bit, we are recording, right? Oh,
We are
yes, recording
working.
up in my top corner. So I just want to welcome everybody that's listening to me and Michelle. And she sent me the name for this conversation this morning, which is Roaring Truth with Love. And I'm totally loving that title. And, you know, this came about because we connected. Oh gosh, it's not even that long ago, is it, that we like connected in person. We've been sending text messages to each other over the years.
Yes. It's not that long ago we connected in person, like what, maybe 3 months ago, 4 months ago in person.
Yeah, it's really not. And then you said to me, we need to connect in person. I think it's time for us to connect in person. And I was like, yes, it's totally time for us to connect in person. And we had this conversation, and then we just, both of us knew that we needed to bring other women in to our conversation. And it's just created this most amazing space of being held and sisterhood without the darkness of sisterhood. It's sisterhood with this beautiful space of love and no judgment. And I think that everyone who shows up in that circle, which is often like 13 people,
Mm-hmm.
feels so held and supported in that space. And something that both of us have been allowing ourselves to come to terms with is that the knowledge that we've actually gained in the work that we've done over the years. And so, you know, I'm really grateful that we're here having this conversation again, because our first conversation together in person was amazing. And then that then led into the sister circle.
And I remember you said after the first conversation, I wish we recorded this.
Yes, yes. And you said before, oh gosh, I wish I'd started recording already. Something you said before we started today was the work that we've done to bring ourselves to this place so that we can allow ourselves to just go with whatever we're being called to do, because there's really so much purity that's required in us from that, because we're called every single day to go out and be in the world and do great things. And it's only our own internal resistance that stops us from doing that. And what I loved about what you said is you know, we explore freedom a lot with the people that we work with, James and I, and the sense of freedom. There's a quote, and I can't remember who said it. There's a quote that says, you know, the more freedom you have, the more you realize that you no longer have choice. Because when you are truly free, you are literally on the river, letting yourself be moved. And I feel that's where we're all being called to, is to allow ourselves to do that. And that's part of this conversation today, right?
I have the truth bumps when you said that. That's exactly what it feels like. And we were also talking before about how, you know, you have to clear out all that sludge and dirt and grime to create that clear channel so that you can just float down that channel. And you realize that, you know, all of the excuses that you had in the past, all of the fears you had around things, all the self-talk that would say things like, you know, I don't have time for this, or I can't do that, or it's too much, or whatever the lies are, you know, that have been hardwired into your programmed brain. It makes it you know, very challenging to just even get on the raft and start floating down the river. And when you hear those voices and you clear all those lies, and you're really just trusting in yourself and, you know, in the universe and the divine and what it's bringing you, in terms of the work that you have to do in the world, you're just floating. You're just floating down the river, and it just becomes very easy. There's no more resistance.
Yeah, and it's not something to complain about anymore, is it? And it feels free. Like it feels, once you have that sense of internal freedom, it feels free in the external world as well. But there's a whole bunch of work that needs to be done. And we first need to acknowledge that we always have a choice in
Right.
every single thing, you know, and where we are in the world right now is we've got a really great opportunity to recognize that, because so much of what we're being shown out there is trying to tell us that we don't have a choice. But when we remember who we truly are, yes, we do have a choice. And it's only in exploring and acting upon that choice that we can allow ourselves to have more and the feeling of more and more freedom.
And it's so awesome the way this illusion of not having a choice has functioned and worked to shine the light on the opposite end of the spectrum, which is that it's all choice. You absolutely have choice. So it's really helped to show us, I know, because you and I have talked about this before as well. We really, I think both of us have expanded in our understanding of the possibility of choice in every single moment, in every given situation. And that's what happens when these polarities are created. The light is shining on either end of the spectrum,
and we get to choose
and
which one we're going to focus on. Yeah,
exactly.
And you know, going to what you sent me the other day about you know, conversations for us to have, that element of our children, which is so deep within both of us. And you know, I think that's one of the reasons why you and I are connected so deeply, is because the children are so important to us, and we both have healed our inner child so deeply, that we can be a human who saves the children by showing the children how to be a free human.
Yes. And that's a perfect segue, because that was one of the topics that we really wanted to talk about today, was how we can support the children in these times, and what all that's happening in the world, how it's creating choice for us, you know, as a collective, to start to do things differently that have the possibility of deeper support for the children, as opposed to what, you know, the world has created and rolled out and just sort of accepted for a really, really long time.
And we've all accepted it.
Yeah.
You know, like not one single one of us can point the finger and blame the rest of the world, because we've all accepted it at some level.
That's right. It's been a really, really slow rollout, you know, over the decades, I think, of, you know, self-disconnection in terms of consumerism and, you know, work. And we're all sort of, you know, feeding these traumas that are normalized, that we're not even aware of, with our addictions, which looks like consumerism, you know, just sort of taking in all the time all of our various addictions.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens when, you know, it's the old saying, you don't know what you don't know, right? So if we don't have awareness for the fact that we're suffering, that we're depressed, that we're anxious, that we're in a rat race, that our kids are in a rat race, that, you know, we're just running all over the place trying to keep up with what this world has become, and then medicating ourselves with all kinds of addictions. And I say addictions very loosely, because there are thousands, and I still have some that I'm still healing. And more are coming in the form of technology. And anyway, when, you know, it's very difficult to step back from all that when we're in the thick of it and say, perhaps there is another way that would feel more connected, that would feel more true to who we are as humans, and would help to heal us and would help to open the space and pave the way for our children to have a different type of experience. But first we have to sort of recognize that maybe, you know, maybe things could be better if we did things a different way.
Yes, every single one of us. I want to go back to something that you just said, because I think it's really powerful and it's really important. And so like 10 years ago, I listened to a podcast or a talk, and it was Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra, and Debbie Ford. And in that talk, Deepak said this sentence, and I was listening to it on a plane, and I heard him say this sentence, and I was like, what? No. He said, every single one of us has an addiction. If we didn't, we wouldn't be human. And I was like, I don't have any addictions. What are you talking about? So I wanted to ask you about what you just said about I still have addictions, because on the surface of it, many of us would believe that we don't have addictions. But what is it that you see as those things that, well, what is the addiction? What is an addiction for starters? And what is it that you see as the addictions that you still have?
Okay. Awesome question. And Gabor Mate also talks about that a lot. Your Deepak Chopra quote there. He says that everyone has addictions. So what is addiction? To me, addictions are the things that we do or think or feel in order to get through the day, really, in a nutshell. So for me, for example, coffee is a big one. Coffee is something that, for me, it has connotations of nurturing, being nurtured. When I was a teenager, I remember sitting in the coffee shops with my friends and for hours drinking coffee, just talking with my girlfriends. And, you know, so for me, it relates to love that I'm receiving externally, which I'm differentiating from internally, love that I'm giving to myself. It's something that I'm taking from the external world and giving to myself, so that I can feel more comfortable.
Yeah, perfect.
And so that's my really big one, is coffee. But I also, it's very easy for me, and I think all of us, it's easy for all of us, but some of us are more sensitive to this than others, to feel the effects of too much technology. And I know for myself, I'll all of a sudden I'll wake up sometimes and I'll be like, whoa, like, you know, I've been messaging people or emailing people back or checking Facebook and, you know, emailing back someone in the Facebook message or comment, you know, responding to a comment, you know, someone put on a post and like, what time is it? And like, you know, and I definitely have a tendency to, you know, sort of soothe myself from that as well. And the reason for that, it's because of the connection that comes through it. And so addiction is the opposite of connection, I guess would be my definition. And so whatever we do to try to feel connected is an addiction.
It's that that's so beautifully put, because that's it, isn't it? It's a need for the external validation from that world out there, that I am connected, I am okay, I can feel joy, or whatever it is that I believe that this thing is going to give me. And
Right.
And you know, I love what you said at the beginning when it was like thoughts and things that we think, things that we do, because it is things that we think. You know, if I've got a particular thought process, then I will find, you know, for instance, with social media, if I've got a particular thought process, I will scroll social media to confirm that. And that's still, it's still an addiction.
Yes.
The only way that we overcome that is to stop, like you said, hey, what's going on, is to stop, come in here and go, right, I'm just going to go, like, I'm going to go have a cup of tea. I'm going to sit and just chill out for a bit.
Right. Yes. And you will feel almost like for me anyway, I'll almost feel like my body is buzzing. Like, when I retreat from it, like specifically technology, like there's this push, you know, this pulling or something. And it's like I'm actually going through a form of withdrawal.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It is. And then we think about how much our children are using technology as well. I know I've spoken to both of our your children homeschool as well. Yeah.
Yes.
So, you know, both of ours homeschool. There's a little bit of an age difference, but they still homeschool. And your eldest son didn't homeschool though, did he?
No.
Yeah.
You got that right.
But I've spoken to like quite a few of my daughter's friends, and you know, one of them I was speaking to a couple of weeks ago, and I said, you know, how many hours do you spend a day at school on the technology? Because she said, we've got the laptops and we've got the iPads, and she's like, oh, basically all our classes are on the iPad. And I couldn't believe it.
Right. And they all have the smart boards now in their classrooms, you know, basically these screens that the computer talks to, and and the 5G is going in everywhere now, and it's definitely concerning, for sure.
And there's a frequency that's being emitted from that's affecting our children. When you step away as an adult, you feel the buzzing in your body.
Yes.
Children are being completely numbed from that because they think being in this environment 5 days a week, that feels normal to them. So when they can't necessarily distinguish, because they don't have that consciousness, if we're not being able to help them see it or feel it.
Right. And, you know, I know in my two younger ones, you know, I was saying to you earlier today when we were messaging, my children are, you know, bouncing off the walls, and, you know, and I said to my partner, I said to Chris, tonight, it's because they've been playing a lot of Minecraft. You know, they like Minecraft, and they, you know, it's just, I notice it if they're playing and it's not even like they've been on it all day. We've been swimming. We were outside playing with frogs. We were making obstacle courses with chalk. I mean, we're outside constantly. They're getting out their energy, but just even even like an hour, like a relatively small period of time, I see their behavior shift, and it presents the illusion of hyperactivity. And of course, there's a lot of children that are also being branded with that. And really what it is, you know, you're looking at a screen and things are moving and all these colors and et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden you're in the world. Okay, now how do I ground myself here? And when you're already sensitive, like our children are, it's challenging to feel like you're not floating away when you're used to that technology grounding you. And it's really like this intersection of, well, it's like the World Economic Forum. What do they say? The whole goal is to combine technology with biology, and what's the other thing, sister? I don't even remember, but it sounds like a Black Mirror episode to me. So
we probably don't need to go there right now. Maybe later.
But actually, I wanted to go back to something that you were saying before. You were talking about thoughts, and you know, how our thoughts can be addictions as well. And I just really wanted to emphasize that, because I just thought that it's just so brilliant. It's our thoughts alone. I mean, first of all, we got to give them some credit and a big hug and some gratitude, because they're there because they have served us.
Exactly.
They've served us, they've kept us alive, they've kept us kicking, they've kept us getting out of bed in the morning and doing whatever it is that we need to do that day.
Yeah.
So much gratitude for what has served us. But at the same time, oftentimes those thoughts are just coming from that survival space. It's an autonomic nervous system response, and it's fight, flight, or freeze. And so the thoughts will represent that, and they are addictions, because they'll come in as those forms, like I was saying before, I can't do this, or I need this, or, oh, let me check Facebook, or let me get my coffee, or whatever it is that fuels the actions as well.
And so important, because that just went through me for a second. What you said about they deserve a big hug, because our thoughts don't deserve to be ridiculed.
Right.
They're
right.
not, when we recognize that they've served us up to this point, before this moment when we knew better, why do they deserve to be ridiculed?
Right.
And that, that's based in that survival and that judgment. And if you look at how people are so polarized and so wanting to make each other wrong right now, if we can only come back to this space and go, there's a thought there that wants to make something wrong, which including me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm just going to stop for a second and take a breath and ask if I really want that to be my initial action and response right now. Or if I want to act out of love and kindness and just give it a big hug, because that right now, that's all it needs. When a child is crying, they just need to be held. They don't need to be ridiculed. They don't need to be told to harden up. They don't need to be judged. They just need to be held.
And I love so much that you brought in that the children piece to it, because that's really essentially what's happening. Is it's like, when we haven't learned, and most of humanity hasn't, and there were many years when I knew nothing of this myself, there's no judgment, but when we haven't learned to love ourselves and love our own inner child, then, it's challenging to give that to other people, but also it's challenging to even recognize that our inner child that was never loved and heard and seen is actually leading and acting.
Yeah.
And all of our inner children are together, and we're all leading and acting, and there's no parent around to sort of help steer and model, right? Yeah. Then it can be quite a shit show.
I did like the word you used yesterday. It was, and I'm just going to say it was clusterfuck. And I was like, that's the best word. And I heard Pete Evans on a podcast recently, and he talked about everything that was going on, and he said, it's just fuckery. That is such a good word.
It is just blatant fuckery. That's really it. Yeah.
That's what it is. We digress for a second. But when you were speaking then, it was like that metaphor and that symbolism is so important. Like if you look at what's going on out there right now and imagine it as like one big playground with all of these little children playing around, and there's there's kids acting out all over the place because these are wounded inner children. If we're projecting onto somebody, if we're projecting anything onto somebody, there's an inner child or an inner teenager wounding that hasn't been resolved within us.
Exactly.
And the only way to do that is to go in, give it a big hug, like you said, and just be with her or him.
Right. Yeah. And it's just it's so funny because I had never envisioned that analogy before, but as you were describing it, I was totally seeing it, just all of us running around as children. And
there is no parent. There
what's
is no
that?
parent. There is no parent. There is no childcare worker that's going to tell us to stop. There's no one there. There's no authority, because the authority's in here, the one that needs to give us the big hug.
We are the ones we've been waiting for, right? Yeah. And it's this generational outcome, because when we're children and we are not held and validated in those spaces where we have a need, that is because our parent was not validated and held in the spaces where they have a need, and so on and so on and so on. And so it just carries on all the way down. And I've been in spaces where say there's a 4-year-old and he's in a bad mood. He's feeling kind of cranky. He's having a bad day, just like grown-ups, just like we do. And, behaving sort of in accordance of that. And then sort of, I just observing parents, and again, I don't judge it. I'm going to actually, let me just put a little preface to this in. My eldest son, who is going to be 18 in November, I was a very different parent when he was young than I was to what I almost think of as like my second generation of children, because Owen is 10 years younger than Lucas. And then Penny is a year and a half, not quite 2 years younger than Owen. So the way that I parented Lucas was very, very different. I didn't have an awareness for things that I now have an awareness for. And so, there's just no judgment, but it's that growth process that allows us to also see what we didn't know before. And, then we can go back and we can love ourselves in that space as well, and hug ourselves in that space as well. Because we only do what we know to do. But anyway, just watching parents in these spaces where, say, a child is in a bad mood, having a bad day, and the parent will be so, punishing of that child, emotionally punishing, this isn't the way you behave. This isn't the way I raise you. This isn't how we act in public. I witnessed something similar very recently, which is why it's coming to mind. And I could see, as the parent was speaking to this child, I could see their own inner child that was actually speaking through them. That was like their inner child. It was their parent's voice coming through their inner child, coming out their mouth. And so this is why it's so meaningful for us to learn to parent ourselves, because until we, and by that I mean giving ourselves love and validation, because until we learn to do that, it's very challenging to do that for our children. And it's very challenging to recognize the inner child in ourselves when it comes up, and in other humans around us when it comes up.
Yeah.
And then we end up with the shit show. So
end up with the I like to use that word, so I'm just going to use it.
Yeah. Me too.
When you said to give ourselves love and validation, and so people will say, well, I don't know how to give myself love. But the key that you just said is validation.
Yes.
Because when there's all of the world that's trying to tell us what we should do, and we've lived our lives just doing what we think we should do, and we wake up a little bit and go, you know what, actually, I don't want to do that. This is what feels right for me. That's the validation. And I might be in a space where I really I might still be self-loathing, because I've woken up and I've realized I've given away my entire life to other people, and I'm a people pleaser. And so, I'm in a space where I loathe myself for that. And so the first step is actually to become aware, and then to ask myself, well, what do I want to do? And then to take a little step that's aligned with that, and then to validate that. Because when I do that, I'm no longer looking for the parent or the childcare worker to tell me what to do, or the teacher. I'm going in here and I'm going, what's important to you, Kirsty? What do you actually want to do? Oh, I want to go, and I want to go for a walk on the beach. Then go and do that. And then I'm walking on the beach just going, oh my God, like I've never done that before. Good on you. And that's how we start the process of self-love. It doesn't just come. And that's a really valid point that people make. It doesn't just come. It comes through a slow process of honoring what I actually want, and what, using my voice to go to and to start hearing my own voice and validating that.
Right. Yeah, I love how you're bringing in the action piece too, where it's like actually go and do something, like do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
Make the
It's the only way.
Make the leap from just thinking about it and actually do it.
Yeah.
And I think first of all, we have to like figure out what it is that we even want. Because I know for me, that was a big part of it. Like, oh my God, what do I for years it was like, well, do I want to do that or don't I? I don't know. Maybe I want to do this instead. I don't know. And then, oh my gosh, and then I would drive myself crazy, because then, you're back and forth, and then you're disgusted with yourself. And so now you're judging yourself for that, and it clusterfuck, right? So it's sort of like the part of it is actually discovering like what it is that you really do want. And that is a long process that's very intertwined with who you are.
Yeah.
Discovering who you are. But back to the action piece, like there have been studies done that actually demonstrate that people that actually do the thing, whatever the thing is, voluntarily, as opposed to involuntarily. So like, let's say there's like a swarm of hornets, and they're all buzzing around in a room, and someone forces you to go into that room where there's like a swarm of hornets. There's going to be a very different nervous system response activated than the Kirsty who chooses voluntarily, I am going to go into that room of hornets. I am going to slay those hornets. I am going to be fine. Anything that comes of it, I can handle it, and all is well. There's a very different actual nervous system response that's activated. And I just thought that when you said, go and take the walk on the beach, to me, it's like voluntarily choosing you, going and taking the walk on the beach. That's the thing that like starts to rewire the brain.
It's the choice, isn't it? It's such a powerful choice, is such a powerful thing. And to start to recognize that I have it rewires my brain. And right. My kids will, if we've talked, because my girls are 14 and 12 now, so just like you with your eldest son and Owen, with Lucas and Owen, the difference, I was different parenting Abby when she was small as comparing to Penny, because I was only starting my wake up process when Abby was a baby. So, or just before Abby was a baby. So I knew a lot more 2.5 years later when Penny was born as compared to when Abby was born. But they've grown up in this environment where, and in fact, I was just having the conversation yesterday because, Penny was telling me this beautiful story of, she goes, this little girl that comes to trampoline with me, she said, she always shows up and she never has elastics for her hair. And she said, and so like, I've always got a spare one, so I'll give it to her. And she goes, you know what I've done, Mum? She goes, I've got elastics in my bag. So if she needs them, I'm right there and I've got one for her. And I said, that's really beautiful. That is such a beautiful thought that you've got for your friend. I just want to give you a different perspective. So if you keep doing that for her, if she keeps showing up every week without those elastics and you just keep giving it to her, you could contribute to her believing that, well, if I don't have something, then somebody else is just going to give it to me and somebody else is going to do it for me. And I said, so it's really beautiful that you're having the thought about your friend. I said, this is what being a mother has really taught me, is to, if I just give everything to my children and I do everything for my children, then that's not really going to end up in you guys being powerful, is it? And she's like, yeah. And I said, but I just want to acknowledge that it's a really thoughtful thing that you've done for your friend. And she got it. And that's it, like we're constantly offering opportunities for our children to recognize that they have choice and to feel more powerful. Because another thing that that my girls have said to me before in the past, she's like, I was talking to this girl the other day, one of her friends, and she says she doesn't even realize that she's got a choice as to if she goes to school or not. And I said, well, no, lots of people don't realize that. They think that they have to go to school.
Right. Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that. I love that. And it's so telling about how Penny thinks of it. It's like, of course there's a choice. So that's what I love so much about it. But I love your whole story too about the elastics, because that was inspiring to me. What a beautiful, amazing moment that you had with her right then, where you're, again, you validated her beautiful intent, her beautiful, loving intent, wanting to be a good friend, wanting to be caring. And yet at the same time, you presented another choice and reflected back to her the importance of self-responsibility. And she had a beautiful opportunity to love her friend by supporting her in developing self-responsibility. So I love that. And yeah, that's been something that I've really been big time navigating with Owen and Penny too, especially as they're getting older now. At 6 and 7, Owen will be 8. And so I've been really enjoying pushing myself to keep the space open for them, and see what they take on and what they can handle before I jump in. And
so many people say to me so often, they're like, whoa, because our girls have been homeschooling since they were 10 and 8, and they say to me, oh gosh, you're brave and you must be really strong, and how do you do it? And I could never do this. So what was your experience of deciding to keep your children at home, and what's been your experience of that aspect of it, of your children being at home and not being out? Because there's so much, and we were talking about this in our text messaging. There's so much around it, that there's so many beliefs that people have around homeschooling, because it's still such a weird thing for so many people. Yet with COVID, so many more people have experienced it, and everyone has their own experiences of it as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you the same question, so I will answer, and then I would love your answer. But I was wondering as well when you actually began homeschooling. So it's interesting to me that you sort of made a switch at some point. And I did as well. I always homeschooled, or I always sent Lucas to public school. Owen, I actually sent to kindergarten, and he went for about 3 months, and it was a harrowing experience. And I made the decision quite early on that I was going to pull him from public school and engage in this homeschooling path. And for me, it was not anything that I would have foreseen. In fact, so this is going back 3 years ago now. I was in a space in my journey where I was eager for my children to go to school so that I could begin to develop some of my own professional pursuits.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything that I had foreseen or anticipated or even desired, but for me, it wasn't a choice because Owen is my fiery redheaded Leo. He is a warrior through and through. And you're going to take that boy and you're going to put him in four walls and you're going to have him sit at a desk when he's 5 years old. And it's not going to be pretty. And then on top of that, at this point, he's expanded a lot and emotionally matured a lot. But at 5, he was very insecure when he was away from me still. So, he sort of came into the world roaring, and I carried him in his, I laugh. I tell the little ones all the time, even after Penny was born, Owen was on my back and she was on my front, and I used Maytai carriers. And he just came into the world, with a lot of challenges being here, in this density. Mm-hmm. And I also suspect some other elements, but I'm not even going to go there because that's like a whole other thing.
Maybe another session we'll go.
Yeah, right. And, it was because Owen coming into the world was my greatest gift in so many ways. But until I was able to start to use those gifts to grow, it was also very traumatizing for me. Because Owen, he never slept, he just had a lot of challenges being in the world. And he was a part of a deeper awakening for me. So he catalyzed me. And, I didn't understand what was happening because, of course, the popular rhetoric is, children they nap at 3 months old. They just nap all the time, And my eldest son, he was really like that. He was just very sort of content and, took his naps and, all of that. So it was like, what is happening? And anyway, I could go on about that that's a whole other podcast too, probably, is that aspect of parenting. But suffice it to say, Owen, the way I would describe it is I could see him being pathologized. I don't really know how else to say it. He wasn't fitting into the box. And so they were starting to label him. They were bringing in the school counselor. Excuse me. He just was having a really hard time. And I got to a point after about 3.5 months of that where I just knew without a freaking doubt that he was not going to spend one more day in that environment where he was learning that there was something wrong with him, and he was going to embody shame, which he had not been exposed to yet within our home. And I could see how how identifications were being created for him. He's this type of child, he's that type of child, as opposed to identifications of other types of children. And I could see that they were false, that they weren't him, that he wasn't seen. They weren't able to see him there because of all the construct and all of the constrictions of the environment. It's very challenging for teachers to be able to do that. So I pulled him at that point, and everything sort of rearranged, life sort of rearranged. And I, but I've always been that way, Kirsty. And I know that you're similar. When you understand something, when you see something, that's just freaking it. And you do what you need to do to support it. And so that's pretty much what Chris and I did. And I didn't know any homeschoolers. I've never known anyone who's homeschooled. So it became this sort of search to find the others and find support, find community. And then actually, just because I want to be really authentic here, there was a school that opened locally in this past September, when our school year starts, September before COVID. And it's like BC, before COVID. And it, you know, it was all project-based learning.
Before the clusterfuck, BC.
What'd you say? Before
Before
clusterfuck.
clusterfuck.
There you go. Perfect. Perfect. BC, before clusterfuck. Yes. So a charter school opened that was actually a public school, and it was all sort of agricultural learning. The kids had gardens that, you know, so they're growing food. They rescued pheasants and trout, and it was all project based. And so I was so thrilled because I actually had gone back to graduate school. And so I thought, oh, this is going to be great. This school's perfect. And we did enjoy it when we were there, but it was a very short time, and then COVID hit. So you know, then we went back to homeschooling, and now of course schools are opening, and there's no way at this point that I am sending them anywhere. They will absolutely be homeschooling, but it goes beyond just the stringent requirements, you know, the COVID requirements for masking and social distancing. It also is because for me, it was a deeper sign from the universe that my children are meant to be within our family unit as they learn. As opposed to learning what others believe that they should be taught.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I have experienced resistance around it. And I want to be like really honest about that. For me, it was about really agreeing to be their mother. And, you know, most of us are amazing, wonderful mothers, and we have only the best intentions. But for me, there's a distinction between being a mother and like what that looks like in the construct of the world, you know, like making sure they're clean and fed and loved, hugged in the soccer practice and getting them to school on time and all of that, and play dates, and right. Those are all wonderful, beautiful things. I don't, by any means am I trying to tarnish that or paint that in a negative light. But for me, agreeing to be their mother meant devoting myself to that as one of my responsibilities in this world, like all day, you know, like throughout the day, and meeting all of their needs myself. And that comes from a knowing that it's how it's meant to be. But because we've lost the support of tribe and other women around us, it's become more challenging. Women are working outside the home, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand there are so many different you know, needs and situations that make it very challenging. But for me, agreeing to be their mother was very much based in agreeing to be here and take my responsibilities to my children very, very seriously. And so now I'm to the point where there just can't be anywhere else. So, in terms of a public school versus schooling with family.
There's so much golden power in what you just said. There's a whole conversation around the normalization of shame that I think we should have at another time, because you know what you were saying about Owen and the potential for him to be in an environment where he believed he was wrong. You know, that's a really powerful conversation that I think that we can have. What I loved the most was what you said at the end about agreeing to be the mother, because making that because it's a decision. It's not just a decision to have a baby, it's a decision to embody the mother archetype. And so many of us have mother wounding in one way or another, you know, like, oh gosh, I'm even with my mother, and I'm so grateful for my mother, but there's still wounding that happened because of decisions I made in relation to her. With my mum, it's not necessarily anything that she did, it's decisions that I made in relation to her. And so when we decide and choose to embody the mother archetype, it brings us to this deeper place of connection, you know, like, and for me, that what you said resonates so deeply, because that's been my journey entirely. And my decision and choice to to be my daughter's mother. I never actually, I never wanted to be a mother. I didn't have the dreams of being a mother. It was just kind of something that's like, oh yeah, well, this is probably naturally going to happen because I'm a woman. But I wasn't one of those girls who dreamt of one day, waking up and being a mother like you. I had a career, I had a job from the time I was 14 years old. And so I was very independent, very capable, very high achieving, all of those things. And so then when I become a mother, it's like, what am I supposed to do here? And so making that choice it literally is a conscious choice that we make to be a mother. And I love that so much. And I think, God, we could talk for hours about it.
I think too. Was there? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sister.
Well, it's an initiation that each of us goes through when we choose. And what you were describing, your trials and your tribulations with Owen particularly, it was an initiation that you went through because you were awake. When Lucas was little, you weren't necessarily in that place. So it wasn't a conscious initiation. But when we wake up and we go, I'm going to be a mother, we go through an initiation process. Every single one of us, and it's nothing to be scoffed at. And we judge each other, like all of those things that you were talking about. There's so many we've all got different needs, we've all got different desires, because we're all individual humans and women. But when we make that conscious choice, we go through our own initiation process.
Yes. And I love how you also brought in the mother wound, because that's a big part of it too, is healing that, right? Healing our own mother wound allows us to actually step into that place. So that process is also very heavily involved in that initiation. And I love that word, initiation.
Yeah.
So what was your initiation? What I know that you're saying it's very similar, but just wondering if, there's any sort of details, like what was the catalyst when you decided to pull the girls from school?
Yeah. I didn't decide to pull them from school. They decided to leave. So it's quite a different process. So when Abby was ready to go to kindergarten, where we were living, I found a great place where for where I was at the time, I believed it was an early childhood school. So it was from kindy to grade 2, which was just great. And then we decided to leave that place because we realized that it wasn't for us where we were living. That was in Canberra at the time. And then we moved to this amazing place, and it had this little independent school. And it was based on neo-humanist perspectives. So they did meditation and they did yoga in the classroom. And when Abby was in prep, it was all very, which prep is like kindy, still all very play-based. And just a beautiful environment. And so Abby went there to grade 2. By the time that Penny came into prep there, they'd started to introduce less play-based learning and more head stuff. And whilst that would have suited Abby fine, it wasn't necessarily what suited Penny, because she's a very different learner. And so I noticed that there were some things that weren't quite meshing with her. And halfway through the year, we made a decision for her to come out of school at that time. And so we started a little homeschooling journey then. But after that year, at the end of Penny's prep and Abby's grade 2, we decided to travel in a camper trailer for a year. So the girls they didn't go to school. And so, they went to school. They went to the School of Life. And it was the most amazing year. We traveled to Australia. I've got the most beautiful little videos that Penny would grab the iPad at random times and just start talking into the iPad. And there's one where we were at Uluru, and she was in this beautiful little cabin. And I found it on my iPad later, and she was just showing the iPad all around, and she's like, look at this place. And she was 6. And so, that was a really beautiful year. But the girls after that, year decided that they wanted to go back to school. So Abby was 9 and Penny was nearly 7. And so where we decided to settle, there was this little a little public school. There was only 70 children there, and I thought, well, this is great. That year, it was an interesting year because Abby was it was a small school, but the girls were sort of that she was in a group with were between 8 and 10. And she would come home every afternoon, and every afternoon we'd spend around half an hour with her emotionally processing what had gone on throughout the day. Yeah. And she was, intellectually, academically, sport, she was excelling at everything. And this is what I was like as a little girl. Mm-hmm. She was a really high achiever, but emotionally she was being squashed. Yes. And she was starting to not really understand what was going on for her because she couldn't understand why these girls were just so mean, and just she couldn't have these conversations and cooperative conversations. And so at the end of that year, surprisingly, she said to us, I don't want to go back to school. And we looked at her and we said, okay, we will support you in that decision, but we want to make sure that you're not just running away from something that's hard. And right. So we spent 6 weeks because our school year finishes in December and then starts again in January. So we spent that whole Christmas break with her, working through emotionally what it was that we would do. And at the end of that 6 weeks, she said, no, I don't want to go back to school. And as the years have gone on, because she's 14 and a half now, when it was time for her to go to high school, she thought, maybe I want a bit more structure in my life. And so she looked at some high schools around the area and did some research, and we said, whatever you decide, we'll support you. And she came back to us and she said, yep, because one of them was having an open day. And I said to her just before the open day, I said, right, so we're going to the open day. It was a Steiner school. And we're going to the open day on Thursday. And she said, no, I've decided that I don't need to go back to school anymore. And I said, well, what's the basis of that? And she said, well, firstly, you and Dad don't work 9 to 5 days a week, so I don't really want to do that. And secondly, I've realized that I can create my own structure. I don't need to go to school to try and get a structure that somebody is telling me that I have to do. Wow. And so what she did from there was she allowed herself to, we got her a planner, and then she would start to schedule out her own week with the lessons that she wanted to do and things like that. So it's been such a valuable experience. But like you, it's been really challenging because we've had to get out, both James and I, in our own way, have had to get out of our own way. And because often they don't want to do anything. They just kind of want to sit around and read a book, or they want to play Minecraft, or that's what they feel like doing at that time. And so for us to not project our own experience onto them has probably been one of the most challenging things. And then to have people not really understanding what homeschooling is, even though school has really only been existing for the last 100 years, people not really understanding and then asking questions. And particularly the girls have found that really challenging, but have come to this place within themselves now where they will say, no, I don't go to school. I school at home. Mm-hmm. So it has been a challenging process, but it's been so enriching because every single one of us, all 4 of us, have learned so much more about ourselves,
right,
by doing this.
Right. Yeah, it's like every single thing that you just shared is so full of growth. every
Yeah.
single thing, you know,
Yeah.
just everyone being pushed, everyone being asked to step out of their own perspective and consider a different one.
Mm.
And first of all, like, I mean, just the fact alone, like Abby with her schedule, just that alone to me is it's like everything, because there's so many tentacles coming off of that, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's like teaching self-responsibility, and then on top of that, she's learning that, well, I don't even want to say learning. She's embodying
Mm.
that she has the freedom to create what her day looks like and what her life looks like,
Yeah.
instead of what someone else is telling her it should look like.
Yeah.
And that is huge. Like, I can't
It's
even, like, huge gong, you know, like.
Well, it is, because, you know, we work with teenagers when we do our young warrior camps, and the biggest thing is that they don't know how to think for themselves, because they've been indoctrinated into a system where they get on a bus at 7:00 in the morning, just mosey on into school. Their whole day is planned out for them. All they need to do is show up and sit down at a desk and do their work, then get on a bus in the afternoon, come home, play computer games and go to bed. Now that's an nth degree example, I understand, but we've worked with like elite sports teenagers
Mm-hmm.
that don't know how to think for themselves, because their life is planned out for them.
Right.
And so to grow up in a world that allows you and encourages you to make every single decision for yourself is so powerful. You know, we didn't learn that until I was in my 30s. I didn't realize that I could do that until I was in my 30s.
Same. And I feel like, in a way, we've almost gone full circle, because that brings us back to the addictions.
Yeah.
Because it's like, when we just keep doing the thing that we think we're supposed to do, at some point we come to a space where we realize that we're not leading with who we are and what we are here to do.
Mm.
And prior to getting to that space, before we even have awareness for it, a lot of times there's depression, anxiety, you know, all kinds of psychological, emotional, mental, physical manifestations of that first schedule, you know, from the time we're little, and then all the way as we grow up in our lives to the time, you know, then we're getting married and we're going to the job and we're having kids. And it's at some point we get to a space where we're either going to sort of numb out and you know, engage in our different addictions, our different coping mechanisms, or there might be a catalyst, you know, there might be something that will help break us out of that. And I know for myself in my life, I had many catalysts throughout my life that were like trying to wake me up.
Yeah.
You know, from the time I was a kid, you know, how you can look back and you can see.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, a lot of it is the narratives that are available to you, you know, like Abby and Penny, you know, are my children, my Penny, we both have Pennies, and Owen and Lucas, you know, they have parents, they have caregivers who are providing, you know, different narratives, so that it's like, this is a possibility. It doesn't mean they have to accept that narrative. You know, any one of our children could accept any other narrative and do any number of other things. And that's their path. That's their life. That's their choice. But, you know, most of us, you know, we weren't exposed to alternative narratives. So, you know, even as children, teenagers, in our 20s, whatever, we're going through all these things. We're feeling all these things. I know for myself, there was, you know, a lot of anxiety I had, depression. I was often just, you know, just unhappy, even though you never would have known it. I was always smiling and had a lot of friends and was always doing things, but, you know, holding it inside. And if an alternative narrative had been offered to me, you know, if there was other information that could have said, hey, maybe it's this. I think that might have sort of catalyzed me a little bit sooner into that first layer of awakening. And yet I'm not saying everything was purposed, like everything was perfect the way that it went. I'm just saying that the narratives, like offering additional narrative, like other narratives, are just so important. And
absolutely.
And for ourselves as moms and dads, as parents, like it can be really hard for us to hear these alternative narratives because it's not like what we've learned or what we've been told. And it can be really scary, right? Because it's like, this is what we think the world is and what it needs to be. And if it's not that, or it can be something different, then it can really activate our survival instincts even, you know. But just, you know, sort of, again, just going into that space and, you know, giving all that stuff a hug. It's okay. You know, it's all okay. All is well, but just considering alternative perspectives. And maybe, so like, I guess my question to you, Kirsty, is how, like, do you feel like COVID, this whole situation, is that offering a space for caregivers, for parents to maybe consider some different narratives that in the past they wouldn't have had an opportunity to consider because they wouldn't have been exposed to them?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And just like you said, you know, we all go through experiences in our lives that were designed to wake us up, but we didn't necessarily wake up at the time. We don't realize that until we've got to a space where we're looking around and just going, what's happened to me? And so, you know, whilst we're going through that journey, we don't realize it's the experience. Go back to what you said before about the action. It's the experience that helps us gain an understanding. With our girls, we say to them, we've always said to them, and you're probably the same, is don't believe anything I tell you. Right. Go, like, question me until you feel clear. And that's because that helps you make your own decision. And I will never give you the answer. I just won't. And that's, you know, that's frustrated the crap out of my girls, particularly Penny, over the years. And she still tries to get me to give her an answer. But I believe that, you know, people have experience, and I've heard talk like around our area of that more people have been, have decided to homeschool. Well, and will that be for long term? Who knows? But it's the experience of it and that realization of maybe we can do this, that gives people a sense of confidence. It's always, once I do something, I realize, oh, actually, I have got what it takes to be able to get through this. So 100%, I see that. And it's like everything with this whole COVID experience, isn't it? I mean, there's a great darkness to it. And you said this before, whether it was while we were recording or not, I can't remember, but there's a great darkness. But then on the other side, there's so much light. And it's, which one am I going to focus on?
Right. Yeah.
And what do I want? That aspect that you said before about the children learning in the family environment. You know, when we created our lifestyle, when James and I created our lifestyle, when we decided this is what we want our life's work to be, we based it upon the family is the building block of society. And we need to come back to that.
Yes, we do need to come back to that. We really do need to come back to that. Because it's really broken apart, and it's really all driven by economics, pretty much the way the world is set up financially. So and that's definitely COVID is providing this beautiful opportunity to sort of reconfigure what the family looks like and how it functions. And you know, I know I've seen sort of, you know, when I'm on Facebook and I'm reading different conversations and stuff, and I see a lot of, you know, resistance, because what I'm hearing I'm going to say it's always mothers really that I'm reading this from. So on one hand, they're concerned about the environment that they're sending their child back to in public school. But on the other hand, perhaps they work or perhaps they just are like really afraid of just beginning the journey because they feel like they don't know what they're doing. Like, is there something like, what would you say like to those women? I know there's so much. That's a big question. There's so many layers to that. It's like a couple things.
The first answer that came into my head when you were talking, I didn't know you were going to ask me a question, but was, I could say something that's really confronting here, and this is what I was thinking in my head when you were talking, and this is it. How do we break the cycle? So I have to go to work, so I have to send my children to school. How do we break that cycle? If the children can't act, if we don't act. And people will say to me, but I'm a single mum. You've got your partner. I was a single mum for the first 18 months of my daughter's life. So I understand what it's like to be in that situation. But it comes down again to choice. It comes down to, what do I want more? Do I want to go to this job because I think that that's the only way that I'm going to get the resources I need to support my family? Meanwhile, put my children for 6 hours a day in an environment that I don't feel safe with them being in. So how are they going to feel safe being there? Or am I going to take a flying leap because this is what I want for my children and for my family unit, and just trust, even though I've got no fucking idea how, that I'm going to take this action because this is what I need and this is what my children need, and I'm going to start to break the cycle. That's really hard. But we're being called to do that right now. Every single one of us, no matter how long we've been on this journey for, every single one of us is being called to level up. Because if we're having these thoughts about how can I feel safer, how can I help my children feel safer, the way that we save the children is to create safety and freedom in here.
Yes. So thank you for speaking all that. I totally agree. And I sort of put you on the spot with the confronting, the confronting thoughts, but it's true. And the thing is, yes, it's confronting, but like you said, we are being asked to level up, and yes, it's hard, but the only way out is through.
Yes.
The only way out is through. And as hard as it is, the hardness, the toughness is equivalent to the growth, the expansion, the joy, the freedom. It's amazing how that works, because when we're doing the easy stuff, we're also, this actually is tea, by the way. I bet every time I've taken a drink, you're like, oh, there's your coffee. This is tea. When we're doing the easy stuff, then we need more of the addictions, or we believe we do, to get us through. So the hard stuff actually does bring us into a new space. And the birthing process of that is a birthing process. There are very painful contractions.
It's like we were talking before, that in us, this creation of this sister circle for us that just came supposedly out of nowhere, but through this process, every single woman that shows up in that circle, like we are receiving so much acknowledgement that we're so supported and that we're so loved and so nourished and nurtured, just because we decided that I'm going to take this leap and I'm going to sit in a space with these women who I don't even know, like from around the world. I'm going to sit here and I'm just going to be open. I'm going to open my heart to them. And that's what we're doing. When I make a decision that's based upon what I want rather than what I think that I should be doing to comply to being a good citizen in society, I'm opening my heart a little bit more.
Yes.
That's scary because I don't want to be hurt. But when I do open my heart, I receive so much that I couldn't have imagined because my mind can't imagine it.
It's so true. Yeah. And just by being you in that space, it's like you're just going in there and you're being you and you're opening your heart and all of this comes in. And I'm really curious to see, like, sort of looking in the future a little bit as we take this journey together. As there's going to be mothers that are going to listen to this, I hope, and maybe feel supported. How can this lead us into exactly what you're talking about more deeply, where that's happening more often, where we're able to show up with our heart open and give and receive? So like that mother who's like, oh, I could never do it. I could never homeschool because I'm a single mom. I have to work. Like, what space, when she loves herself and she honors herself and her knowings and does the same through her son, through that, what spaces might open to her to support her? Because that's something that the world, we're just so, it's like we said in the sister circle last time, I think, where's the red tent? We were saying, where's the cave? Where the sister and the mother and the grandmother hands, tenderly nurturing, the sisters, and I know that you do that work as well. Within your Resilient Leaders Foundation with younger women, right? Like, as they're coming of age. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I would love to see, like, I'm so excited. I feel this sense of like curiosity, and it's like this image has been coming into my mind lately a lot. This image of like dolphins jumping, it's like dolphin medicine. It's like this joyful, this intelligent curiosity, and I've been feeling that. So even in different sessions with clients, different things have come up where that will come in. And so just sort of like opening to that and just thinking, like, what could this become? Like, if we all loved ourselves enough and trusted enough, like, what could this become? Because that all translates into how we love and support each other, Yes.
And it's where we're going. You and I both know that. And that's where, that's where we're holding the torch is in this space. And we both know that it takes bravery and courage to walk over to where we're holding this torch. But there's so much beauty once we stand here, and there's so much support once we stand here. Like one of the ladies said in our last circle was that when she closed her eyes and we were sitting in circle together, because obviously we're not physically together, but we are in the ether. And when she closed her eyes, she realized that there was so much more than the 13 of us or whatever there were sitting in this circle. There were so many beings that were in that circle with us. And this is the space where we are now, and this is where we're going to as a humanity. But we need to there's some rough journeys that need to be taken in order for us to get there. And I mean, like when I said before, when I said this is confronting, yes, it is confronting. And we've got a choice at that point. When I feel confronted, I've still got a choice. I've got a choice to maybe go, all right, I'm just going to explore this confrontation a little bit, or nah, I can't deal with that right now. I'm going to go back over here and have my coffee, or, go on my social media and find a way to prove my belief right now. And, whatever choice I make, neither of them is wrong, because it's the choice that I'm making right now.
That's right. Yep.
And I feel that, I will, no matter what happens, I'll keep standing here with this torch, and I will keep shining this light over here, so that if you're ready to see it, you might be able to see it right now.
Right. I love that, sister. I love that so much. Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many people shining that torch. The torches
So
are
many people. Yeah.
everywhere. And that image, yeah, like I think wasn't it Hannah that she drew, or
Oh
was it
yeah.
Queen? And it was like, just there's so many just generations of beings supporting us as well
Yeah.
as us who are here now.
Yeah.
There's just so much support and so much love.
Yeah. It was Beverly, I think, who said that, that it was, so many people. There's so many conversations that we can have, and we're going to have them. So that's awesome. But one thing that was just then that I wanted to share was I was listening to an Indigenous leader in Australia recently giving a TED talk, and he told this little parable at the end, and it went something like, when a man walks into a cave with a candle, he can see himself, and he can see himself. When 5 people stand around with him in that single candle, they can see each other. When each one of those 6 people lights a candle, they can see the entire cave. So those 5 people need to feel confident that they can actually light their own candle, and they don't need to rely on his light.
I love that so much. Yeah.
And when they do, we start to see the entire cave.
That's such an important distinction. It's a very, very meaningful distinction. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And I feel like that's an awesome place to sort of
finish for today.
Yeah. For tonight. Yeah. But yeah, there's going to be many more. I'm feeling it for sure.
Me too. Well, thanks for asking me, sister.
Thank you, sister, for accepting and for being you. I love you tons.
Oh, I love you too.
Namaste.
Let's see what else we can get up to, hey?
I think a lot of good stuff for sure.
Yeah, and I'm, for the people, for the mothers that are watching this, I'm so grateful that they have spent the time, because simply in spending the time, you've actually given to yourself, and you can take that one little bit of validation if you choose.
Yeah. And, definitely reach out to Kirsty or I. We'll be posting this in various forums. We were discussing before exactly where we're going to be posting this, but definitely, reach out if you feel called, if you do need support, because it's there. And when you receive it, before you know it, you will be the next person in the cave lighting the candle yourself for someone else to see, and so on and so on. That beautiful domino effect.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you. Mwah.
Thank you, sister. Mwah. Have a beautiful day.
You have a beautiful sleep.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.